Hey, everybody, welcome to our series on the One Big Beautiful Bill Act and exploring some of the bigger tax provisions that will impact you and your tax return. Car loan interest, who's in the market for a new car? And this one is really kind of interesting. The math on some of these had our heads scratching a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, but tell us a little bit about this. So, is it my entire car
Mhm. Well, first, the vehicle has to be brand new,
brand new? Okay.
new personal vehicle. You are the first purchaser. The final assembly has to have taken place in the United States.
Okay, so how do we check that? Is there a mechanism for us other than just asking the salesperson? There is a mechanism actually, and you can take the VIN number and actually search that VIN number in the Department of Transportation database and see where the final assembly actually occurs. It has to be in the U.S., so important point. All right.
So it's not the whole car payment, just the interest.
Yeah. This is pretty common because we see this a lot in practice where somebody will tell us about their student loans that they're making payments on. And it's important to remember on every loan payment, you have two components. You have principal and interest.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, there's no subsidy here for the principal component. It is just the interest.
yeah. And that the loan has to have originated in 2025. So you have to have, you could refinance if you still qualify, meet all the other requirements. But so the interest, you have to have purchased it at some point or obtained this loan in 2025. It's just going to include the interest. And this is good through 2028.
Okay, so to paint an example on there, if you bought a vehicle brand new, you were the original to title it in 2021, let's say, you could technically refinance it here in 2025 and then be able to deduct the interest. Now, for a lot of folks that I've seen their car payments around that 2020, 2021, that times were good, weren't they? The interest rates were low and they're probably not refinancing their vehicles,
Yeah.
would be my guess.
Yeah.
So,
Just to get the credit, it might not be worth it considering the interest rates are so much higher right now.
yep,
But
yep. So it's not going to work out all that well. Now, it does have to be at least a two-wheeled vehicle. So, no, I'm not really familiar with a lot of unicycle personal vehicles out there, but could be a motorcycle, could be one of those spiders with the three wheels. But for the most part, we would expect, kind of your four-wheeled family style vehicles under 14,000 pounds. So if you're looking at like a large RV, probably not going to qualify with that gross vehicle weight rating. Now, total aside, interestingly, a lot of those RVs would be considered a second home, so that interest could be deductible under the home mortgage interest, which is a totally different path, totally different video. So we'll kind of digress from that a little bit, but there is a phase out on this, so not everybody's going to get this.
yeah, so the phase out is going to start for at $100,000 for a single head of household and 200,000 if you're married filing joint. So it doesn't matter if you qualify, if you start to go over that, it will be reduced by $200 for every thousand of modified adjusted gross income that's over that threshold. And then you'll start to lose that interest deduction the further over that modified adjusted gross income that you are.
Yeah. Now this is really kind of interesting because that $10,000 doesn't double. It's only the threshold that doubles. So this does run in the opposite direction of some of the other provisions we've seen in this law where the amount and the threshold double depending on your filing status. But here it's just the threshold that will be doubled here. Now we see this as a AGI. This is not an itemized deduction. So if you are a standard deduction filer, this is still a 4 AGI deduction, but that could play heck with some states.
Yeah, so you do have to consider whether or not the state that you're in is a conformity state, whether or not they um, are going to require you to add back that deduction in terms of calculating your taxable income in the state. So, and every state is different. So it really depends on the state. And you have to be aware of what state you're in and what those rules are.
Okay, so new vehicle can't be a used vehicle. We could refinance if possible, but those MAGI phase out, those modified adjusted gross income phase outs really could create a challenge for some folks. So, for us, the way that we've looked at this for some of our clients is that families really should consider how those teenager cars are financed. It might actually make sense that, especially if you have a teenager that is working and they have some tax that they're paying, to let them put the loan in their name, build some credit, you co sign for them, and then they would be able to take the deduction. It seems like that's what it would be, absent any guidance from the IRS that says, look, if you're claimed as a dependent on another return, you don't get this deduction. But we don't see anything in the law that explicitly says that. So it's just kind of interesting. And then the other piece too, right? If we're trying to really think about that, I remember one of my vehicles early on. My family actually loaned me the money and then I made payments to them. And it was a great way to learn about finances growing up. But it seems like third party or related party loans don't qualify here.
No, I don't believe they do the way that it's written. There hasn't been any guidance on it, but it does seem like it has to be qualified interest.
So it
So
seems like we're not giving our families like 1,000% loan interest for okay, all right. Well, we tried. So has to be a third party arm's length loan, typical of what you would get through the bank or through the dealer is kind of what we would expect. So yeah, this is a cool deduction, and I think it's going to do some real good things for folks and give them a little extra bump on their tax return. I don't see this as being like seismic in terms of like I'm going to get a huge refund now as a result, but it's a nice little sweetener.
especially if you're going to buy a new car, it's worth it to look into trying to meet the requirements so you can get the interest deduction while it's around. Because if you were to buy a car in 2025, by the time this expires in 2028, you should have it pretty close to paid off. So you
Yeah.
get to deduct that interest the whole time.
Now, I'm actually really curious to see how the manufacturers will handle this from an advertising perspective, because we're so accustomed to, oh, let's buy a vehicle in the fall because that 0% financing comes out. Well, that's not really helpful now if you get to take the interest as a deduction. So should be kind of interesting to see how that all plays out. But
Yeah.
all right, so car loan interest deduction. Thanks for watching.